Thank you, Rod. You can introduce me anytime you want. I appreciate it. Rod has seen me in all the low moments as well, which he was generous to omit from that very, very kind introduction. But Rod and I have been working together, as he mentioned, since 2016, and we have a very informal relationship. We don't go through all the staff. He just texts me if he's upset at something I need to do, and he gets results. He gets results. He is, no one has led more for Fremont than Rod. I mean, if you ask if they would disagree with him, if they have an issue, whether it's an issue of the streets, whether it's an issue of the schools, and you email him, you text him, he'll get back to you. And I admire how accessible he is, and I admire his pragmatism and his leadership, and I look forward to continuing to work with you for many years to come. Thank you. Let's give him a round. I'm so honored that we've got, God talking about workers, and we have two extraordinary courageous workers with us in the back, who I had the chance of meeting at Starbucks, who are working to unionize in Sunnyvale Starbucks. And will you raise your hands back there? Let's give them a round of applause. They're fighting for fair wages, they're fighting for fair benefits. They want to make sure that there's no retaliation, cuts in their hours, cuts in their schedule by Starbucks. And I believe the wealthiest area in the wealthiest country, we can afford to treat people who are serving our coffee with dignity, with respect, and we need to stand up for them. So thank you for being here. I've also been very, very involved these last few weeks on gun violence. I mean, it is horrible and so tragic what happened here. Right off A80, 5-year-old killed, shot to death. We see what's happening with the mass shootings in Tennessee. When are we going to do something as a country? Children are being murdered in front of us. Guns, the leading cause of death for children. It's completely unacceptable and a stain on our nation. And I'm going to continue to fight to ban assault weapons, to have basic background checks, to make sure that we have red flag laws that take away guns from people who we know have committed violence or threats to the community. These are common sense things. Law-abiding gun owners should be for them, and are for them in many cases. But we need to keep pushing and fighting for that, and I will continue to do that in Congress. I've also been very outspoken against this Texas judge decision. Have you followed that? To outlaw when do activist judges get to decide and interfere in our freedoms? A person's decision about their own health is for them and their doctor in consultation with their family, not for a judge sitting there questioning the FDA, questioning science. And if they're going to politicize that on abortion, think about what they can politicize next. Vaccines? Are they going to politicize other drugs that they simply disagree with for ideological reasons? It's wrong, and we're going to, in Congress, when we get back, continue to speak out very firmly for upholding the FDA's decision to provide these pills and abortion pills that people in this country have been relying on for decades. And it's their right, their freedom to rely on that. I continue to be very, very involved in bringing manufacturing back to the United States. Our chips in Scienceville that I helped co-lead, is now being implemented. We're seeing semiconductor manufacturing return. The IRA is leading to a lot of battery plants, solar plants coming back. It was just this morning at Lucid, the electric vehicle company in Newark, that is doing the manufacturing here in the United States. A lot of opportunities to bring clean manufacturing back to the U.S. That's going to create good paying jobs, and I'm proud of our efforts on that front. Finally, I want to mention the trip I took to Taiwan and the approach that I've had on the China Committee. I think we have to avoid a Cold War. with China, but we need to make sure that we are preparing Taiwan for deterrence and defense, and I will continue to make sure that we're standing up for freedom and democracy in Taiwan while trying to avoid escalating the situation with China into a Cold War, and I've been honored to serve on the China Committee. Those are some of my opening comments. I want to save the bulk of time for questions from all of you and what's on your mind. I'll try to keep the answers brief so we can get to as many folks.
Thank you. I'll make this brief. We have 3 microphone runners today. Alon, who's right over here, Olivia, and Hip, around the room, assisted by our 4 interns. If you have a question, please get their attention. They will take your question. We're going to go around the room. Staffers are instructed to get a balance of topics, so your questions tonight might not be asked in order. We're trying to spread it around. Try to keep politics out of it. This is an official event. If you have casework inquiries, talk to the caseworkers. If you are selected to ask a question, please let the staffer hold the microphone. Ask a question, don't give a speech. Please don't attempt to follow up questions. And the goal is to let everyone here ask as many questions as we can get in this evening. That said, the first question is going to be coming from Yvonne.
Well done, Tom. That was what was it? Just the time shorter on the instructions.
Congressman, we have Julie from San Jose with a question on gun violence.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for saying up against gun violence and talking about it. The first question, but thank you for that. I wanted to ask why you have yet to co-sponsor HR 169 to create Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and if you would be willing to support that mission.
Absolutely, I would. I usually co-sponsored almost any gun violence bill. I wasn't aware of this one. Do you know who the author is? All right. As long as it's a reasonable bill, I'm happy to do that. So why don't we, Bill 169, Office of Gun Violence Prevention. We sent that in Canada to see if we can co-sponsor that. Thank you for raising that.
We're going to, excuse me, we're going to go to the, you know what, we're going to go, let's go to Hip, and then we'll come back to Hip. This guy's next question.
Congressman, we have Sano from Santa on library voting topic. Hi everyone. As I expect you to be aware, this week we got some reports coming out of Bihar where a century-old library was burned to the ground. And a mosque library was burned to the ground. And then there's a law about 1,000 people, that then not only destroys that library, but then also went ahead and burned down a school. A school was burned to the ground. They attacked homes. They attacked shops. And it's been very, very bad, as you know, the situation there. Now, my question for you is that we've been seeing that as a result of these things. By the way, this happened during the month of Ramadan. I'm fasting as well. I'm sure some others here are also fasting today. And so this attack on the place of worship like that is very unacceptable to us. And it's not just Muslims. Last month, the Townhall, we saw that Sikh gentleman, Sikh party, they also raised this issue. We've been seeing these genocidal fascists in power in India growing in power while we remain silent. We've raised this issue many, many times with you. Many of the groups have raised this issue as well with you. Whether it was the torture of missionaries, the internet bans there, the CAA, NRC, hijab ban, and it's just been progressively getting worse and worse. And this policy of appeasement that we've been having with Modi, who is better known as the butcher of Gujarat, right? It's not working, it's only getting worse. We saw the Rahul thing, thanks to Fremont, by the way. But Please keep silent. So to respect our audience here. Please. Thank you.
Okay.
I want to make sure everybody respects you all.
There's no question.
He's lecturing us.
Please listen to this gentleman's question.
By 7 years in Congress, we've done town halls every month. One of the things I always brag about is that in our constituency, we have no violence, we don't disrupt, we listen to each other civilly. And I hope we can continue that tradition in our town.
Yes, I did want to say in respect to all of these apologies if this is coming out that way. My question is two-part question. Part A, have you seen the BBC documentary on Modi, in which it clearly demonstrates Modi and the BJP's involvement, they were responsible for the massacre in Gujarat? And part B, would you today finally, in no uncertain terms, be willing to condemn Modi and the Indian government right now for their human rights violations and what they've been doing to the minorities over here today? Thank you.
I appreciate your passion, and what I can say very unequivocally is I condemn any violence against any person based on their faith or any violence against places of worship, and I affirm very strongly the values of pluralism in the United States and any country around the world. Now, India is a strategic ally of the United States. President Biden will be inviting Prime Minister Modi for a state dinner. The State Department has issued a report of human rights concerns that the President and Secretary Lincoln will bring up, but they're also strategic, important parts to the relationship. And my view on the U.S.-India relationship has been to support the President's approach while affirming the values of pluralism and making sure that we condemn violence. But I appreciate all this you're speaking out, and I have spoken out where there are incidents of clear violence. I've spoken out for an open internet, and will continue to support the strategic relationship with India rooted in liberal democratic values here in the United States and in India. Look, democracies, as we know in our own country, are not perfect. I think we have the greatest democracy in the world, but we have to work, it's a work in progress. And we have to work.
Congressman, we have a question from Harsh and Padma in Fremont regarding SB 43. But before we do, there are quite a few people here that are concerned about that issue. If you could stand up if you are here specifically, primarily for that issue. So there's quite a few people here. Harsh or Padma?
I'll start.
Harsh, go ahead.
I'll do the first question. So first of all, thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman. This is excellent, and all voices are heard. I really like it. It was also a pleasure to learn that we have a connection in Philadelphia. I went to grad school there, spent some good time in Philadelphia.
Where did you go?
At Townhall.
Oh, great place. John Jay used to be the coach of the
He did, I know. So, what I want to bring up today is what is the as Director Icahn says. We stand for against all sorts of discrimination. There shall be no discrimination for anyone based on anything. However, you cannot discriminate in order not to discriminate. And SB 403 targets Hindus specifically and will lead to profiling in order to identify caste or whatever else is in that bill if you've seen it. What I'm worried about, right? This is a state issue, of course, right? And however, what I'm worried about is it impacts a lot of your constituents. And as being your constituents, you have the right to bring it up to you, right? So what we want to know is where would you stand, or where do you stand in this issue? Specifically, you think the current laws adequately address caste discrimination? And what can you do to help us so that our voices are heard?
I appreciate the passion, I appreciate the peaceful and constructive way that the group is here. Let me tell you my thinking on the issue. We start with a very basic premise. I believe that almost every Indian American I know is opposed to caste discrimination. That caste discrimination has no place. Now, as you know, people say I mentioned my grandfather a lot. My grandfather was part of the Indian independence movement. He spent years in jail with Gandhi, and as a result, I've actually studied the debates between Ambedkar and Gandhi, where Ambedkar, who was a brilliant legal jurist, came to the United States, authored the Indian Constitution, influenced W.E. Du Bois, was arguing that Hinduism intrinsically had caste in it, and Gandhi rejected that. And I fall more on the Gandhi side of that debate. I don't think though I've read a lot of Ambedkar's thinking, and I'm deeply inspired by Ambedkar. We had a day in Congress to celebrate Ambedkar. So my perspective on it is that obviously caste discrimination should be illegal and not allowed, but we need to make sure that any bill or effort does not have a selective enforcement or unfair profiling of a presumption. I don't take a position on state legislation. I never have. I don't intend to on this. But what I would recommend is that there be constructive dialogue so that we can not have caste discrimination in any way in the United States, and at the same time not have unfair enforcement or targeting of individuals based on that.
We're passionate about this issue. We have one follow-up question from Padma.
Sure.
Okay. I'm Padma Gopalakrishnan. I've been a Fremont resident for over 25 years. I'm a registered Democrat. I vote in every single election, including the primaries. And I'm here to ask you, I assume you have seen these videos put out by a group called Equity Labs that is completely behind Equality Labs that is behind the SB 403, and they have publicly announced their intent to destroy Hinduism, and they are anti-Hindu group. As a registered Democrat, I'm very shocked that the Democratic Party is giving a platform to an organization like that and trying to pass a legislation solely based on a biased survey conducted by a biased organization. So I'm here to ask you if you would be willing to make a statement against SB 403 and call your friends in the state senate and let them know that their constituents are against this bill, and also make a statement against groups like Equality Labs. Equality Labs. Thank you very much.
As a representative of one of the most diverse districts in the United States, meet with everyone. And I have met with groups that are the Hindu community, Sikh community, Muslim community, Equality Labs for their concerns, and I listen to everyone. That is what it means to represent a diverse community. And where people disagree, I think they should disagree civilly and respectfully. I mean, if we can, in the heart of Silicon Valley, learn how to disagree and form a common bond, and what hope is there of building a multiracial democracy, I hope candidly that some of the prejudices and some of the hatred of the previous generations can be left behind in the United States of America. We don't have to be burdened with the baggage of very painful disputes in the past. And so what I would say is I don't take positions on state legislation, not just on this in general, but what I would encourage the group to do is to sit down with the legislative leaders and to express the concern, which is, and as I understand it, no one here, raise your hand here, you think that there should be discrimination based on caste. Raise your hand if you think that there should not be any discrimination based on caste.
There should be
So-
no discrimination.
There seems to be a consensus on that, and so then the question is, how do we make sure that there is not a selective targeting or enforcement or judgment on people based on their surnames or how they look, and in a constructive way, and that's what I'm going to continue to encourage the conversation to happen.
Congressman, we have Rebecca from Fremont with a comment on the Massa Act.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to meet you. So I first want to say thank you for co-sponsoring the HR Fighting on Massa Act bill. I really appreciate you. This matter is very close to my heart. I'm personally a survivor of human trafficking. That's how I came to the United States. So just the fact that you co-sponsored this bill, it's just amazing. And you're such a great congressman. Thank you.
Thank you again to you and many of the Iranian American community that have come forward, stepped up with responsible activism. What is happening in Iran, the suppression of human rights, the way they're treating women is unconscionable. And the MACA Act has said that we need to sanction that the rulers who are conducting violence and suppressing women, suppressing democracy. I'm proud to co-sponsor and will continue to be involved.
Congressman, I have Nam from San Jose who has a question on the supply chain.
Thank you, Congressman, for joining the China committee. And I have a couple of questions. Number one, how do you going to protect our U.S. supply chain from the threat of Chinese Communist Party? And number two, would you do anything more to help prevent the U.S. technology from being leaked to the Chinese Communist Party? And also, you just mentioned you just got back from Taiwan. How do you like Taiwan's democracy?
My favorite part of Taiwan are the pineapple cakes. You have those delicious, and the dim sum there. But their most famous restaurant is dim sum. I'm told, I don't know if you know some people staff there, but I'm told they have an outlet or a chain in Santa Clara, believe it or not. Here's what I'll say about Taiwan. You know, the main lesson I took away from Morris Chang was set up the entire TSMC industry was an American expat. He was in America for 25 years, educated at Stanford, educated at MIT, #2 person at Texas Instruments. He was passed over to be CEO partly because he was Asian American. You know what that tells me? Immigrants enrich America. Immigrants help create jobs here. I'd rather they stay here and have built TSMC in America instead of in Taiwan. We let Morris Chang go. It's a colossal mistake. The second mistake was that we let manufacturing go. We said it didn't matter in this country. And so Morris Chang went to Taiwan. He got Taiwan's government to fund it. He set up the entire Intel industry. Now we need to say that production and manufacturing matters. And that's why I was very proud of the Science and Chips Act, Chips and Science Act, that is bringing the semiconductor production back home. In terms of China and the Communist Party, I mean, they are running a $400 billion trade deficit with us. That's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for us. It's not sustainable for China. It's not sustainable for us because we need our factory towns and rural communities to have jobs, good-paying jobs here in America. We need to make sure that when we want masks, when we want Tylenol, when we want basic goods, that we don't have to wait for months because we outsource all our production, all our manufacturing. And for China, it's not sustainable to just have an export-oriented manufacturing economy without sufficient focus on services, without sufficient focus on domestic production. So we need a rebalancing. I've called for rebalancing the trade so that we can not have these structural trade deficits. By the way, the structural trade deficit was the cause of the opium wars with Britain. It was. So we need to reduce tension by rebalancing the economy. And we need to, of course, protect our intellectual property, but we also need to make sure we're investing in the innovation here, out-competing. It's very hard to protect intellectual property indefinitely, though we should try. but it eventually ends up leaking. We got all our intellectual property from Great Britain, you know, and so the way to stay ahead is to innovate, to continue to invest in new technologies, and that's what the Chips and Science Act is about.
Congressman, we have doers from Fremont about veteran support.
Good evening, Congressman. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being here in Fremont. I'm a third-year veteran. I'm in the process of retiring. I'm trying to find out the I should say, medical and different functions that we have for our veterans. How do you support that, first of all? And then how do I help you to make sure we don't lose what we already have, because that's in the process of slowly getting dropped off for us older veterans, and the newer ones that will be our upcoming veterans eventually will not be having those types of benefits.
Well, I appreciate you raising that. You know, I just met with a veterans group this afternoon, a group that was focused on veterans benefits for survivors, people who have lost their spouse due to injury. And shockingly, if you're a survivor or a veteran, your benefits get cut from 40%. So one of the bills we're working on is to say, if someone has served this country in uniform, if they suffer an injury and then they die because of that injury, that their spouse should continue to get those benefits for their spouse's lifetime. And similarly, we need to make sure that you, as having answered the nation's call service, and thank you for that, are treated with basic respect and dignity. And that means having the health care benefits that you deserve, having the job opportunities that you deserve, having opportunities and funding for education that you deserve. And I will continue to fight to make sure that the health care benefits are complete and robust for veterans. And I look forward to working with you on that in the Congress and hope that that can be bipartisan.
We have Albert from Santa Clara with a question on special education.
So, Congressman Khanna, Honorable thank you for being here. And as a member of Santa Clara and as part of the state association for California School Board Association, you know that IDEA, special ed, is not funded at the 40% level that the federal government has always wanted to implement. It's closer to 8 to 9%. Can we have your support and have to push to get more money from the federal government, you know, fund education versus defense, to make sure that our students are supported? Because what we're seeing here in Washington Elementary, Fremont, and other districts here in the state of California, money is going to special ed, which, you know, we're going to support every one of our students, but, you know, we definitely need the support from the federal government to make sure that they fund the mandates that they've implemented from their side.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. This unfunded mandate has crippled education more than any other act by Congress. They were supposed to fund the IDEA Act, which is special needs education with 40% federal funding. My mom was a special education teacher. I understand the importance of special education. But Congress has not appropriated nearly the 40%. They're not even at 15%. I am sponsoring Jared Huffman's bill. Jared Huffman, the congressman from Marin, that would force the federal government to meet that 40% commitment over the next decade. Now, to do that, we need a Democratic president and probably a Democratic House and Democratic Senate, because the Republicans are opposed by and large to that act.
Congressman?
Donald from Fremont has a question on oil.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for this session. With respect to oil, you know, like we have an overall policy that we try to be environmentally friendly and be conscious and reduce the use of oil. But at the same time, when the prices are high and the other countries outside the US are using that against us as a weapon, then we need to be smart sometimes and sometimes produce more to reduce the price and get them also down. So sometimes it's okay to be tactically smart, but strategically still okay. What are your thoughts on that? Because we don't see those smart tactics with respect to counter the oil prices.
I propose that we ban the export of our refined oil until the prices fall. It's not a matter of production. Our production, if you look at it under President Biden, is at record levels. It's at record levels. It's higher than it was under the Trump administration. And you look at the data, it's the myth that the president has cut production. And the issue is that one, we're exporting some of it, so why are we exporting it and allowing these big oil companies to make record profit? And two, why are they making record profits? We need to have a windfall profits tax on those profits and put that money back in the hands of consumers. I mean, they're profiting off the war in Ukraine, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that. So those would be my solutions to how we bring gas prices down.
Congressman, we have Zach from San Jose on big oil company.
All right, Congressman, thank you for being out here once again. I don't know how you do it. I see you on so many shows, and you keep up, you and your staff, you guys keep up with these town halls, and I know there's a ton of work up there in DC, so really want to thank you for being able to commit to what you're doing here, so that's appreciated. And the second thing I want to thank you for is for not jumping into the Senate race, because my head was already spinning. It's going to be very tough, so thank you very much. You will make it difficult for me, so. But, I'll ask a little bit of a dovetail to the oil question. I know that the governor just a little bit over a week and a half ago, they signed that legislation, so that's going to be great for the state. You and Sheldon White House and the rest of the gang went ahead on the federal level. So those are going to be two hits from both sides for big oil. And I was looking at something, I believe Sheldon mentioned $660 billion in subsidies in some cases. So we make sure that those of us in this room go ahead and deal with it, those of us who do drive the cars. So let us know what we can do to help you. I'm already talking with all of our brothers and sisters in the machine machine. And we're going to be out there in force. We're going to do whatever we need to do to help you guys with this bill.
Thank you. That means a lot when we see it. It's going away. And, it's pretty simple that we should not have federal tax dollars going to subsidize big oil. Those companies for decades didn't tell the truth about climate change. Had they told the truth in the 1970s, when they knew the truth, had they told the truth then, we would not be in the situation now. We would have diversified 1% every year, and we would have been in a much better situation with much less pain. And I led last year, if you look at it online, the hearings that exposed Exxon CEO in front of me, Chevron CEO in front of me, and we basically had millions of documents that show that they lied to the American public for decades about the cause of burning fossil fuels and climate change. And now they're taking advantage of this situation in Ukraine to have record profits. That's not right. I mean, fundamentally not right. And Sheldon and my bill will put a windfall tax on those profits and return the money back to the American people, to the consumers. And we're going to continue to push for it, and your support, the machinist support, will help us get this to the president's desk.
Congressman, we have Nami from Santa Clara with a question on peace and liberties.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you for taking my question.
When I returned to the district, I sometimes wonder whether I was elected to be Secretary of State or Congressman from the Central District. I appreciate it.
So my name is Royce Fremont. I'm standing here on behalf of the Muslim community. There are other members that are in the community that are here that share the same concern. If you don't mind standing up, I appreciate it. Thank you. And so the question, Congressman, is that we're in the fasting month of Ramadan. And so many of the people here standing up that you see have been fasting since sunup and all the way till actually just now. We should be with our families. We should be breaking fast, enjoying our community. But yet we're here to raise a very important attention and a concern that we have, and that is peace in the Middle East. As we know, Ramadan is lining up with both Passover and Good Friday, which is beautiful to see, to be completely honest. But our main concern is that our eyes are turning to what's happening in Jerusalem. And that is, for the second Ramadan in a row, the Israeli military and police have entered the Al-Aqsa compound that's renowned Muslims, the third holiest site in all of Islam. We only have 3 right? And so, with videos coming out of there, we saw women being beaten by batons, by so-called Israeli police, which many of us understand are just enforcing the occupation that Palestinians have been seeing for over close to 100 years ago. And so, my question to you, last Ramadan, we brought up this concern with you. It took a while for you to say, really to stand on the side of human rights and to say anything. And at that time, it had gotten heated and there was an all-out war. We're asking you today, Congressman, will you, after seeing these videos of the brutality that was taken on innocent and defenseless worshippers in Islam's third holiest site, will you condemn these actions that were perpetrated by the Israeli government?
I appreciate for celebrating Ramadan and wish you well for the holiday. I did speak out last year on the war. It was a prominent on MSNBC, CNN calling for a ceasefire, calling for the cessation of violence, urging the president to get to that point. And I, of course, condemn violence against anyone who is innocent in praying, whether that be in a holy mosque, or whether it be in a synagogue, or whether it be in a church. Of course, violence is unjustified. I would condemn that violence if it was happening in the United States. I'd condemn it if it were happening anywhere in the world. And I have great faith in Secretary Blinken, who I know, who I respect, to be able to broker a peace and move towards peace in that region, or his values in the region. And I will be supporting his and the president's policy and approach to the area.
Congressman, we have a rule from Fremont on Asian phobia.
Thank you, Congressman, for giving us an opportunity in this town hall. Thanks for continuing to fight against gun violence. As of this Saturday, the kid was killed on 8/18 here in Fremont. So we need to continue fighting and not give up that fight. Overall Asian hate has been increasing, including Hinduphobia. Recently, Georgia has recognized, Hinduphobia was recognized by Georgia, by the state of Georgia. Here in Fremont, we have seen cases where Hindus have been attacked by various groups. Christian Iyer was attacked down the street from here. What can you do to raise awareness of this issue? And also, what do you suggest we do to advocate for it?
I think what we have to do in this community is to stand on a higher principle. I'd like to see Hindu Americans standing up for the rights of Muslim Americans, Muslim Americans standing up for the rights of Hindu Americans, Jewish Americans standing up for the rights of Christian Americans. We need to have a community where we're not just focused on fighting for our own faith. And I'm a proud Hindu of my faith. I'm one of 2 Hindu Americans in Congress. But we're focused on defending in the United States of America the constitutional principles that bind us all together. That we are a nation where every person has the right to practice their faith without discrimination. That we're a nation based on a commitment to the ideals of liberty and equality. And what sets America apart from any other nation in the world. That we are united not by blood. We're united not by religion. We're united not by ethnicity. We're united by what Lincoln called a common allegiance to a political religion, our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. And in the most diverse area in this country, boy, I wish that we could set that model. Because we're so divided as a nation, if we can set a model that we are standing up for each other, maybe that could be a model for other parts of the country. So my point to you would be, yes, speak out against Hinduphobia, but also speak out against Islamophobia, speak out against attacks against the Jewish Americans, speak out against people who are Christian who feel not not included. Speak out for fair treatment for all people regardless of their faith.
Congressman, we have Steve from Fremont with a question
I
on.
don't see if I'm still okay. I'm going to take your question. I said, no, that ain't good thing.
Steve has a question from, regarding polarization in Congress.
Before I start, I just wanted to echo the machinist, wherever he is. He thanked me for coming out on a regular basis. I know it's a long way from Washington and the schedule's really busy. You could easily stretch these to 2 months or 3 months and probably nobody would know, but I come to almost all of them. I noticed that you're here monthly, pretty religiously, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank God.
My question is actually more of a comment, and then I want to get your reaction to it. Over the many years now, I've seen the rhetoric and the partisanship in Congress get worse and worse and worse. You know, back in the whatever 80s, 90s, there used to be philosophical differences like abortion or taxes, but in general, it was fairly civil, right? Now we have people on both sides, right? Whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene shooting her mouth off, whether it's AOC calling Republicans fascist, whether it's Nancy Pelosi saying that if the Republicans take over the House, that it's going to be the end of democracy as we know it. I mean, the rhetoric seems to get more hateful and more hateful toward the other side. They're not just misguided politically anymore. They're like bad people, or they're evil, or whatever. And I'm just wondering, how do you think we got to this point, and how do you think we will get out of it?
I'll tell you my approach. I don't know if it will work fully, but people often ask me, well, how do you work with some of the Republicans? I'm the co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign to speak out for Medicare for all, and pre-public college. How is it that Republicans are willing to work with him on the CHIPS Act, or Senator Rubio willing to work on the National Development Council? And I have two simple principles. I never question anyone's patriotism, and I never question their motives. I try to win the argument based on the substance of the issue. And I think if we just got to that in this country, where we argue the substance, where we let reason be the force instead of hurling insults, then we would make much more progress. Because ultimately, if someone is elected and 700,000 people are sending them there, when you insult them, you're insulting all 700,000 people who voted for them. That doesn't mean you agree with them. That doesn't mean you concede anything. But win over folks by the force of your argument, by the force of your logic, by substance. And that's how I think if we could restore that sense in this country, to have conversations based on argument and reason and sense, instead of trying with a soundbite that goes viral, we would do much better in trying to find common ground or agreeing with respect. And that's why I'm so interested in these town halls. That to me is the essence of American democracy.
We have Richard from Sunnyvale who wants to talk about the child tax credit.
Congressman, it's great to see you here today. Thank you for coming. These town halls are wonderful. The area that I'm concerned about is over the last few years, because of the pandemic, we did some really innovative work in the area of child tax credit. And this enabled people working at home to be able to reduce the child poverty level by 50%. And it's also enabled those that are going back to work in the office to afford child care. But those incentives, those child tax credits, because of the end of the pandemic, I understand are now being reduced or coming to an end. And I'm concerned that because of the tight labor market and the need to keep women and men in the workforce, that without these child support payments, that a number of people are going to have to stay out of the workforce or are going to have an economic burden that they don't need to have. It's in our interest to provide legislation for that. Can you comment on that, please?
I appreciate it. I was so so proud of the American Rescue Plan that we had these child tax credits, $300 per child, 4 families for working class, and it cut child poverty by 40% in America. We saw that people use this money for education for their kids, for food for their kids. This morning I was visiting SJD, one of the child development centers. Guess how much it costs? This is subsidized for someone to send a kid there for 1 month. $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. I mean, that's like private school education. How can you afford that in this country? So I'm proposing, I'm working on a bill that we should be like Canada. Childcare should not be more than $10 a day, and we should be able to provide pay for daily wages for it. People say, how are you going to do that? Well, school is less than $10 a day. School is going to be $0. We pay for that. Maybe we should start to pay for people from 0 to 5, the most critical ages of a person's human development. And the child tax credit is similar in that. It provides money for people who are, for kids who are at those ages who need it for education and for nutrition. What I say is you can't be pro-family value and policies that are anti-family. The child tax credit is a pro-family policy.
Congressman, we have Sam from Fremont on Israel.
Just want to comment on the U.S. was the main force to get rid of apartheid in South Africa. And apartheid is clearly practiced in Israel. And the U.S. keeps supplying them with $4 billion a year, plus everything else. And no one speaks about it in Congress. Do you speak about that?
What I supported is a two-state solution, the lifting of the blockade, and the end to settlements. That is occupied territory. But I also have affirmed the U.S.-Israel relationship, which goes back decades. And so that effort, the American president, I think Joe Biden and Tony Blinken, would like to see peace there. But you have to have parties in the Middle East willing to have that peace, and the United States will play a broker in that area. But I will say this, that, you know, it's a very complex situation. We have people even in our own district having passionate views of it on different sides. And I think our American role is to play an honest broker for peace, that I think Lincoln is willing to play, but there have to be partners there to be able to bring that peace. So my stance is against two settlements, the lifting of the blockade of Gaza, and for two states living in peace.
We have Jim from Santa Clara with a question on union support.
Jim Ford, I'm a union contractor and I'm a union carpenter. I'm wondering what is being done to support the union.
Well, thank you for being here. You know, we've passed some strong legislation that is going to create good union jobs. And the infrastructure bill was a bill that said you have to hire Buy in America, and if you hire union workers, you get more of contracting. It was in the legislation that we passed. The Chips and Science Act is going to create union jobs, especially for carpenters in building these semiconductor fabs. The IRA has a lot of provisions to buy things, make things in America, and hire union labor. So we need to, the one thing we do need to pass is the PRO Act. We passed it in the House, we did pass in the Senate, and that would give neutrality so that everyone would have the right to form a union. But I believe that unions are critical to having a fair wage in this country so that people get the wage they deserve. And I also think we need to uplift the trades in America. We hollowed out the trades education in our high schools, we hollowed it out in so many parts of the country. The trades are great jobs for the middle class, and there's shortages. And we need to encourage the trades, we need to encourage and stand up for unions. So thank you for being here.
Congressman, we have Jennifer from San Jose on your article 2.
Yorker, and I saw that you published an article today about the Silicon Valley Bank. Haven't read it yet. I'm going to read it, but can you talk about the article a little bit and how to bring progressive values to the banking system? Thank you.
I appreciate the article was about me, not one that I wrote, but I think a relatively fair piece. And basically it said a couple of principles. It would have devastated so many businesses in Fremont and Mulcahy, things like setting up a community center, even housing that had gone under. And so I have no sympathy for the executives of Silicon Valley that said that their money should be clawed back, money they made. I have no sympathy for the shareholders. They should lose their money. But people who just put their money in the bank, they should lose their money. And I was proud to advocate that the deposit should be guaranteed. And I'm glad that the president made that decision to guarantee those deposits. It's also going to prevent a run on regional banks. Otherwise, if we hadn't guaranteed those deposits, everyone would be putting their money in Wells Fargo, Citibank, and Bank of America, the four JP Morgan, the four big banks. The other point I think we need to do in banking reform is to have regulations so that you don't have the kind of mismanagement that took place with Silicon Valley Bank. It's probably too detailed to get into what they did wrong, but they were reckless in trying to make too much money and took risks that they shouldn't have made. This is why I voted against the deregulation of Dodd-Frank in 2018. We need to have the restoration of Dodd-Frank in those banking regulations.
Congressman, I have Celine from Fremont who would like to ask about the bullet train system.
First of all, give a big hand to the congressman. Congressman, I have raised this issue before, and you've been talking about bringing industry back to America. Silicon Valley needs industry, but it needs people who work in this industry. The prices are very, very high in Silicon Valley. You've been to all over the world where they have bullet trains. If we have a bullet train from Silicon Valley to Stockton, Modesto, all those areas, and it would take 15 to 20 minutes for people to go from here to there. The price here is $1 million, the price there is $400,000. We will get more skilled people here. Why don't we have a bullet train like they have all over the world? Is it politics? Is it transportation? Is it mafia? Is it... Why don't we have a bullet train running from Silicon Valley to where the land is cheap and we get more workers from all over the world to come in? Steel road may only work by itself, so I will not.
I agree with you. I mean, I would recommend an op-ed I wrote just a couple weeks ago with Rod Durden, arguing for funding for the high-speed train. It started with President Obama, and it's gone from Bakersfield to Merced. We haven't even gotten it yet to San Francisco, to San Jose, to LA. And that was in 2008. We're in 2023. China has built 15,000 miles of high-speed rail. It's an embarrassment that we can't get it. We need the funding. We need real funding to have high-speed trains across the state, across the country. And that's the biggest issue. And then we need the coordination to have some kind of permitting. So it's not quite up, frankly, in the permitting battles where you can't build anything in this state. It's so hard to build things. Look, if we have to deal with climate and the environmental movement, and I said that I'm one of the biggest champions of the environment, has to come to the reckoning that to tackle climate, it's no longer enough to stop projects. We now need to build projects. For that, we're going to need to build salt. We're going to need to build battery plants. We're going to need to build high-speed rail. So it's a combination of getting funding and then getting some reform on the permitting so we can do this.
Congressman, we have Rochelle from Fremont with a question on women's protection in universities.
Hi, Congressman. I know that you support higher education as well as women's rights. I'm trying to understand what you're doing to protect women within the higher education system. Female students who who are dealing with sexual harassment are not taken seriously because only domestic violence is given priority. What are you doing to address harassment and abuse on college campuses?
Well, thank you for speaking out about that. It is a significant issue. I would say one on an individual level, if someone has a case or a complaint against a college or university or harassment, please come to our office and talk to one of our representatives, especially if it's a public university or a university funded with federal dollars that most are. We can at least inquire and stand up for that. And our people like Yvonne and our caseworkers are extraordinary in helping. But I think more broadly, we need to make sure that any federal funding is tied for campuses to have a very strict policy, both in terms of sexual harassment, in terms of rape, in terms of campus assault, and in terms of harassment among students and faculty. And I had worked with Governor Maloney on a bill to require at least the standard campus surveys about the conditions of harassment and violence for women. And because right now these universities hold their own survey, and they all underreport the actual incidents of violence, the actual incidents of harassment, the actual incidents of rape, the actual incidents of women being discriminated against. So we need to require that kind of standard for qualifying for federal funding, and I'm working on legislation with others to do that.
Congressman, I'm here with Starbucks Workers Union from the Sunnyvale store. We wanted to ask about corporate retaliation against workers who attempt to unionize.
First of all, I really want to say thank you for all your support in the past months and throughout the process of us unionizing. And we're curious about what your plans are for bogus legislation and actions to protect unions from company retaliation and unfair labor practices.
Thank you again for your courage in standing up for the rights of workers in Sunnyvale, and being one of the first stores in our area to try to unionize. We need to have the laws of the books enforced. This actually isn't even a need for new laws. We know that these laws exist. You can't cut someone's benefits if they're unionizing. You can't engage in disciplining employees based on our standard just because they're unionizing. You can't have dress code just because someone's unionizing. And the NLRB is underfunded and they're not enforcing it, and they've turned a blind eye. So what Senator Sanders, I, and others are doing is taking this up directly with Howard Schultz in public hearings, taking it up with the new CEO, Nora Simmons, and taking it up with the NLRB so that they start to enforce the law and give people a fair chance like you to have a fair vote and to stand up for workplace democracy. So thank you.
We have Bill from San Jose with a question on Ukraine.
The Congressman, the conventional justification for the Ukrainian operation is that we cannot stand for a country to violate this territorial integrity of one country. Now, my question is, how conceivably can one country, the United States, invoke that kind of a justification when it has, in the past, gone halfway around the world, killed half a million Iraqis, gone halfway around the world, and killed God knows how many Afghans, gone halfway around the world, and killed God knows how many Vietnamese, and is now preparing with joint military exercises, including sending over submarines for a possible attack against Iran, notwithstanding the warmongers advocating for a war with Taiwan. How can you, or anyone, take two diametrically opposed positions and insist that both of those diametrically opposed positions are true? So please tell me, why are we in Ukraine?
one, I was opposed to the war in Iraq. That's how I got my start in politics. I've spoken out against the war in Iraq. I've spoken out against the blank check that we gave President Bush for the long war in Afghanistan. And I'm a supporter of President Biden to finally get us out of the war in Afghanistan. So I have been for restraint in American foreign policy and not going in and violating the territorial sovereignty of other countries unless we are directly attacked. And that is what I'm standing up for in the case of Ukraine. It's not standing up for every decision of American foreign policy. It's standing up for a rules-based international order recognized by the United Nations, that a nation's territorial sovereignty has to be recognized, and that a power can't just come in and invade that nation, and that we have to stand up for that. Does that mean I believe America has been perfect and always lived up to those principles? Of course not. I'm not naive, but I do believe ultimately American leadership and a rules-based international order are better for a more just and safer world.
Okay, we have just 2 questions left. We're getting to the end. I am actually with Peter of San Jose, who had a question he was uncomfortable asking himself, so I'm going to ask it. You met with some tech leaders last week, and he heard that you visited Apple. What's up with Apple? How's it going? What was discussed?
Oh, we had a good meeting on the China committee. We met with Bob Iger at Disney. We met with Tim Cook at Apple and several others about what is how do we manage the relationship. One of the points that Apple made is that while we have to bring back some of the production, while we have to diversify the chains, there's a value in having a floor of some business relationship with China because that prevents war. That helps create some kind of interaction. And that we have to balance not having our most sensitive technology or advanced technology go there, but we also can't have autarky. We can't just be independent. We do want to have some global relationship. And we heard a similar message from Disney. The key is how do we balance? How do we bring more production back? How do we diversify production, not relying solely on China, but how do we still maintain some form of dialogue, some form of economic engagement? Because I'll tell you something, a war with China would be catastrophic for humanity and for this country. And we want to do everything possible to avoid it.
Okay, apologies, we have just one more question as we have it.
Congressman, we have Shalandra from Cupertino, and he has a question on housing.
Thank you, Congressman, for doing this Townhall every month. I don't know how we do it. It's easy to ask questions, but it's hard to give answers, so thank you very much. So my question is, I've been living in the Bay Area for almost 30 years, and I have not seen that so much of deterioration in the living conditions in the Bay Area. There is rampant homelessness, which is leading to lawlessness. Just today I read that in San Francisco, Whole Foods is temporarily shutting down. And same is the case with Walgreens. So my question is, like, we've been paying taxes for like 30 years. I would have paid close to, I don't know, $500 million in taxes. And the same is with all the citizens here. So what's happening with all this money? Why can't we fix the homelessness issue once and for all?
Well, first of all, I appreciate your point, and let me affirm some basic principles. We need basic public safety and respect for the rule of law in a society. That should not be a controversial position. It's wrong for people to just engage in carjacking or smash a store and think that they can steal. When I was growing up, those are the values you were taught by your parents, by the community. Now, does that mean that we should be locking someone up in prison for their whole life if they commit a crime? No, but it also doesn't mean that there should be no consequences to doing that. There has to be the appropriate balance, and we can't be a society which says you can go engage in a carjacking or engage in automobile theft and go break into a store and not have any consequences. That's not a society that is under the rule of law, and we need to have a common sense approach to public safety in our community. The The second point I will make is on homelessness, we need to first build more housing. You know, we need more affordable housing, but it's not that simple. Because a lot of people who are homeless also have issues with mental health, also have issues with drug addiction, and so they need the wraparound services. Even if they have the housing, that's not going to be enough. They need to have the treatment, they need to have the intervention to be able to do that. We worked, Raj and I worked on this in Fremont. We got funding for the Fremont, what is it called? The Housing Navigation Center. It seems to be working. It's, you know, because it's those places where people are homeless, and they got a lot of opposition, by the way, in the city council meetings. And they said, no, we need to do it. They took a vote to do it. And now the people is right near City Hall, but there's been no violence, no incidents. Those folks are in a place where you have guarded, and you have actually visited. There are nice accommodations, and they get services, and they have some dignity, and they're helping get back up on their feet. We need to scale those kind of programs. We need to have the resources to do it, but we also have to have the leaders who are willing to say, yes, we got to put this in our community. It's not going to, we can't have an NIMBYism, don't put any affordable homeless shelters near where we live. It won't work. So it's a matter of resources, it's a matter of getting the local leaders to do the difficult things in building these and having the wraparound services. I really love these spirited conversations. It keeps me on my toes. I appreciate the great turnout into these.
I wanted to ask a question, but I wasn't allowed to. May I ask a question?
Do we have one more? Is it a quick one?
Yes.
Okay.
My name's Geraldine LaValle, and my husband died of COVID in January 2021. Since then, I have been working with the Social Security Administration, and what I have noticed is this overwhelming buildup of the administrative part of our government to the detriment of our balance of power, particularly the Congress and the judicial. It is costing me everything. People who just work with government are now making all these interpretations, and you're all following them. And I know almost everybody in this room is felt the same way I have, gritting their teeth when they come to government office, and heaven forbid, yelling into the phone. And I'm wondering, what are you doing as you are our main, you are the House of Representatives, you're the person that the common man goes to. What is this body doing to get back your power so we have some power?
Well, I appreciate that. I'm sorry for loss and focus. And I share actually your frustration, as is probably everyone on my team, Tom and Yvonne and Olivia and Chris who do this work on a day-to-day basis, because they'll tell you that they don't even take sometimes members of Congress inquiries seriously. They give us the runaround. We have to fight with these agencies to be able to get results for our constituents. Now, I hope if there's a particular case, I hope we'll talk to Chris or Tom and we'll be able to, with Social Security, we're often able to help. But I agree with you that some of this bureaucracy is out of hand, that they need to be more accountable to the people they serve. But we have, I had to build having a more customer-friendly experience just online. I mean, I don't understand when you go and you shop at Apple or Amazon or other things, it's one of those easiest experiences. You go to a government website, the first thing is 45 different links. You don't know where to click. And that's not a technology problem, that's a values problem. Because the businesses put the customer first. And our agencies need to put the citizen first. They need to think about how do we make the citizens' life easier, better. And they're not doing that. And so we've had to build a requirement that do that in a technology way. But we will continue to push for agencies to remember what I remember every month, is that they work for you. You don't work for them. And they need to do frankly more town halls. They need to be reminded that ultimately in a democracy, it's the people who are in charge, not bureaucrats. So I appreciate you bringing this up. I was just saying how you know, how I appreciate when people say, well, you go to these town halls, you get people protesting on both sides of issues, you get all of these questions, why do you do it? And I think that the challenge for a nation, a challenge for a country, is how we're going to emerge as the first multiracial democracy in the history of the world. It's never been done in the history of humanity. So we have an opportunity here in our district, because of all of the globe is really represented, to be a model for that, for the country. To be a model for what we can do and achieve as a community. And so I appreciate people participating, I appreciate participating fully, and I hope we will find ways to have these conversations in a way that respects each other and brings the community together. Thank you very much.